Hey, Mr. Simon here. I'm going to add a self-driving feature to my Tron game. Just a quick overview of the code here. I've got an X and a Y variable that represents where my human player is located on the screen, and a direction variable that's based on the arrow keys that keeps track of which direction he's traveling. I've added a obstacle here. I've added a green rectangle to my Tron game. And I'm only going to be using the key press functions for this. So I've got these key press functions down here, and I'm going to check to see if I've touched one of the arrow keys, and if I have, I'll change the direction to match the value of that arrow key. So let's try this out. Here we go. So you can see I hit the obstacle, and so now I want to add the ability to avoid the obstacle. And I'm going to do that by writing a self-drive function. I'm going to come down here and write function self-drive. And it's going to look to see first, well, what direction am I traveling, right? If I'm going to the right, my direction is 39. And if not black is true, then what I want to do is turn to avoid the obstacle, and I could do that by setting my direction. I'm going to set it to 40, so if I'm going to go right and I'm blocked, I'll turn and go down. And then I can go back and modify these later. So the idea is I'll press play, it'll start going, and when it gets close to the obstacle there, it'll know that it's about to hit something and will change direction and avoid the obstacle. So let's see what happens. Well, that didn't do anything, and the problem is the way that not black works. Not black is using the current position of the player. It's not looking ahead to see what I'm about to run into. So I'm going to make a change to not black. If I'm going right, I want to look ahead by adding 1 in the X direction. So now I'm looking to see not if where I am is not black, but if the position 1 more to the right in the X direction is not black. To make this work, I got to come down here and I got to change X, Y to make them arguments. And so now the X, Y here means that whatever values I send in not black, that's what I'll be using. So I'm not just looking where the player is, I can look ahead. Now that didn't work again. That's because I got to come back up here and change this call to not black. Here I actually do want to look at my current position. If my current position is not black, then the game is over and I'm in trouble. So let's try it now, and, well, still didn't turn. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on down here. So, double equals 39 and not black. So, that was stupid. I wrote the self-drive function, but I didn't call it. So let's come up here. Before we move in one of our directions, we want to call that self-drive function. So it'll change direction before we crash. So let's try that. There we go. And nice. Of course, I'm going to crash down here. I'm going to want to add 4 directions to the self-drive function so I can check to see if I'm going to crash in any of those directions. So let's add a direction in 40. Now remember, 40 is the down arrow key, so I don't want to add 1 to X. I want to add 1 in the direction I'm going, which is down in the Y direction. And if I'm going down, let's go over to the right direction of 37. And I'm going to need 2 more if statements here. If I'm going in the 37 direction, then I'm going to the left. X minus 1 would let me look 1 position of which way I'm going. And if I'm about to crash in that position, let's turn up. 1 more if statement, and I should have a basic autonomous vehicle going here. 38 means I'm going up, so Y would be getting smaller, and then I would turn back around to the right. So let's try that out and see what happens. Not bad. So let's try going to the, oh nice, turn there. Let's go up. See if I use the arrow keys there. There we go. So now you can see it does this kind of spiral pattern to avoid crashing. Now we could probably make something even fancier than that, but this is good enough to get us going. Now if I let this guy go long enough, he'll spiral in and eventually die. Let's speed the process here. Yeah, so eventually, and that's the basic idea of Tron, right? Eventually you become trapped and you can't get out. So now we're going to do one more thing, and we're going to turn the self-driving feature on and off. So we're going to have a autopilot variable. The autopilot variable will keep track of whether the self-driving feature is on or off. We'll start it on at true, and then down here, when we call self-drive, we'll put that in a if statement and check to see if autopilot is true. If it is, we'll do self-drive, but we will also have the ability to turn it off as well. And then I'm finally going to need to come down here in key pressed. I'm going to add another if statement, and this time I'm not using key code. I'm just going to be using key. The arrow keys use a different system than the other keys on the keyboard. We use key for the regular keys and key code for the special keys. So we're going to say if I press the A key, if autopilot is true, we'll set it equal to false. Otherwise, we'll set autopilot to true. And this should let us turn autopilot on and off by just touching the A key. So let's try this out. Okay, so there you go. Press A. That turned autopilot off, and so it didn't work. Run the game again, sets autopilot back to true, turns. Now if I come down here, press the A key, crash. So there you go. I've got the ability to have a self-driving light cycle, and we could build on this to make a fully autonomous computer opponent. But I'm going to leave it there for now. If you got any questions, drop me an email, and thanks for looking.